How often do we as women take a step back and ask, what role did I play in this? What could I have done differently? It's not an easy question, is it? Accountability requires courage, humility, and a willingness to face ourselves in ways that can be uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Accountability isn't a punishment. It's a gift. It's a chance to grow, to learn, and to become better. All right. Welcome back to another rebrand of this podcast. So I don't want to ramble, but pretty much this new rebrand of this podcast for me, and I have my computer for my notes because I have a lot. I often see, like, we always talk about, and I always see the conversation of, well, men need to be held accountable for this, and they're the reason that this is this, and I don't see a lot. I will say I don't see a lot of conversation about women taking the accountability for roles that they've played in situations, whether it be friendships, relationships, workplace, things, and just things in everyday life. So, like, over the past couple of years, I've been very big on, like, accountability within myself, accountability with friends around me, accountability with just, like, people I've worked with, people I encounter. So for me, the rebrand of this podcast is just a weekly check-in for women, where we encourage each other to go past the greater things, where we have growth, where we encourage and we get the accountability and realize, like, yo, maybe I did too much in this moment, or maybe I could have handled this situation differently than I handled the other situation, So it's just like, in this episode, in the very first episode, I want us to explore, do we as women hold ourselves accountable? Because I don't hear a lot of conversation about this. I always hear about, and I don't want to put this on every woman because it's not every woman, but majority, I don't see where women be like, well, I could have done this different, or I should have paid attention here. I shouldn't have ignored this. I take accountability for the role I played. Because at the end of the day, a person is going to do what they're going to do. And in certain instances, not all, in certain instances, we do play a role in why certain things go the way they do. And I'll be the first one to say it loud and proud. Women are delusional. We are delusional. We live in a fantasy land sometimes. And it's just, I'm not going to say it's hard for us to take accountability, but when taking that accountability, it's literally like pulling teeth. So we're going to go on a journey together. And we're going to see where it takes us. So let's get into it. I am your host, Ken. And in today's episode is one I think many women need to reflect on. And it's, do we as women hold ourselves accountable? This isn't about pointing fingers. This isn't about blaming. This is literally about having an honest woman in the mirror type conversation, unfiltered, where we navigate accountability within our own lives. Because let's be for real. Growth don't happen without it. Like, you can't grow if you don't hold yourself accountable, if I'm being honest. So let's get into it. So there are many questions that I came up with, and I'm gonna read them off. My computer's here, I got my notes, so yeah. And I was in therapy actually, and we were talking about this. So this is really what made me want to transform my podcast into something for women, because I know for me, I may say, oh, I hold myself accountable, but do I really? I feel like when you've done something wrong to somebody, you can't really hold yourself accountable unless you apologize to that person, you discuss it with that person, you made amends, right, in some way. Sometimes you don't get a chance to make amends. Sometimes you don't have that opportunity to do any of that. But in the event that you do have that opportunity, take that opportunity. So my therapist actually gave me a list of questions. Well, she gave me one question, and I kind of like thought about this. And she was like, when was the last time you sat down and asked yourself, what role did I play in a situation? What could I have done differently? So, and it's not always an easy thing to do. It's not always an easy thing to sit down and like realize or ask yourself that question, especially as a woman. Accountability requires us to be honest, sometimes brutally honest at that. And honestly, I can share a little story really quick. I think in one of my past episodes, I talked about like past work drama. If I have not, I've had trauma. I've had past work trauma. So when I got to the new job that I was at, I was very like broken. I'll say that. I was mentally broken. I thought that I was over it. I thought that I had dealt with it. I thought, okay, I'm no longer a manager anymore. I don't have to deal with the drama. I don't have to deal with this. I don't have to deal with that. But I never really dealt with the feelings that I felt when I was at my retail job that I had been at for 5 years and been a manager for 2.5 years. So I got to this new job, and I honestly had a problem taking constructive criticism. And I didn't know that I had a problem taking constructive criticism until one day my supervisor said something to me. And I remember me just lashing out, like just going off the deep end, yelling, screaming, cussing, doing all of that, right? And I would do this to him often, like, and he would just take it. But I would do this to him often. Like, my personality is very aggressive anyway, and not intentionally. So, like, when I say I would go off the deep end, baby, I was off the deep end. So, like, honestly, when I actually realized that, and I had that conversation with my therapist, and she asked me, like, when was the last time that, you know, I took accountability, I couldn't think of it. I couldn't think of anything on the spot besides, you know, taking accountability with my son and apologizing to him when, like, situations arise. But, like, she wanted me to think of a situation with an adult. And I couldn't think of one on the spot. I know I've had plenty, but I couldn't think of one directly on the spot. I couldn't think of, like, a pinpointed moment where I took the accountability. So when I sat there and I thought about it, I still couldn't think of none. So when I got home and I'm like, okay, I want to rebrand my podcast, which is why I have not posted until like now. Happy Sunday. But when I sat and thought about it and I was doing this outline to look at it and read it and all of this, I thought about it and I'm like, my supervisor. I sat there and I remember having a conversation with somebody about this topic a while back, but it didn't click for me. So I went into work. I had therapy Friday, and I went into work Friday night, and I, asked my supervisor, me and him are cool. Like, now that I've calmed down and I've like worked through some of the trauma and therapy over the past couple of months, me and him are actually cool. Like, he actually a cool dude. He irritates the hell out of me. Don't get me wrong. But, like, he's actually really cool. So, I, wanted to have a conversation with him. And I was like, I owe you an apology. And he looked at me weird. Because he's like, what? So, and then we got into the conversation of, like, me and going back and forth and my mouth. Being lethal and all of that. Like, we hashed it out. We had a conversation, and I honestly had to take accountability because, one, I was taking past trauma out on him that he didn't cause. I was taking my anger out on him that he didn't cause. That happened from a previous job. And I think everything that I unleashed onto him was things that I wish I could unleash at the other job. Honestly, I really wish I could beat that motherfucker lady down, but couldn't do that. Still can though. I can if I ever, man. You know how it's. Listen. Anywho, so there's that. I think that when it comes to accountability in women, there's a lot of different shapes and there's a lot of different ways that we approach it. Society often teaches us to be nurturers, to keep the peace, and to sometimes put other people before ourselves, but it's beauty in that, but it can make it easy to deflect responsibility when certain situations go left. Like, how often have we heard or even said to ourselves, like, I acted this way because of what they did to me, or I didn't have a choice. I've heard people say that. I've said I did this because of what they did to me. I've said that. So it's just like, external factors do play a role, but it doesn't erase the power we have over our own choices. And we are women, we are emotional, and a lot of us lacking accountability plays into our emotions. And it's either guilt, it's either fear, or pride that can make it very, very hard for us to admit when we're wrong. Even when I remember I was having an argument with one of my ex-boyfriends. Me and him are actually still cool to this day. And I remember me and him going back and forth. And mid-argument, I legit realized I was wrong and still did not back down. And then he realized, like, he stopped. We, like, stopped mid-argument. He's like, or it was the end of the argument or whatever it was. And he was like, he said something. And I was like, yeah, I did realize halfway through it I was wrong. I said, but at that point I was dedicated and I had to just follow through. So I think it was either my ego or my pride that got in the way of, like, I'm wrong, but I'm not going to let this man know I'm wrong. So, like, listen, accountability, people, accountability. But I think refusing to take accountability stunts your own growth as a human being, as a woman, as a person, as a mom, as a daughter, as a friend, as a wife, as a girlfriend. As somebody's partner, it definitely stunts your growth and it keeps you stuck. And that's just not where we want to be. That's not. Come on now, people. We want to elevate. We want to evolve. We want to do great things. And you can't do that if you're stuck in your ways. Like, that is just not going to happen. You can't, like, come on now. So then we have to ask ourselves the question, why does holding ourselves accountable matter so much? So to me, it matters because it's acknowledgement of somebody else's feelings. It's acknowledgement that you are not always right. It's acknowledgement that nobody is perfect. And it's acknowledgement of you wanting to learn from your mistakes. You want growth. So it's more than about admitting you wrong. It's about also self-respect, building trust within our relationships and with others and with ourselves. You can't really trust yourself if you don't know how to hold yourself accountable. You can't, because you don't trust your judgment. When we take responsibility for our actions, we're saying I value myself enough to own my mistakes and learn from them. And that's powerful because when other people around us see us practicing accountability, it encourages them to do the same thing. It encourages them to want to do better. I've had so many people and so many times, like, tell me, like, in certain situations, like, Kennedy, you're better than that. Like, you know that you're better than that. So why are you not, what's the disconnect here? Like, talking to me, I'm like, so why do y'all want me to be the bigger person? I'm tired of being a big person. I'm always the bigger person. I'm a big person in every situation. And it's just like, every response that I get from different people is, we know that you're better than that. We know what weight you hold, in a sense. You're better than that. You know that you're better than that. So why not just take the high road? You don't always have to go to hell. Sometimes you do. I'm gonna go to hell every time about my son. Like, crash out real bad. But like, when it comes to other situations, you have to realize, like, you can take the high road, or you can sit back and reflect, like, yo, I really like did too much. You know what I'm saying? So how do we hold ourselves accountable? So if you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, you're probably thinking like, okay, it sounds great, but where do I start? And I actually have a list. I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold on. I got y'all. I have a list of 5 things that actually worked for me. Because all of my friends are pretty much straight shooters. They do not sugarcoat anything for me. They will tell me if I'm wrong. They will tell me if I'm right. They don't agree with me just because they are my friends. If I'm dead ass wrong, they're going to say, Kennedy, you are dead ass wrong. And then that's just going to be the end of it. And that's just what it is. So, number 1 is self-reflection. Oh no, I lost my place. Oh no, I didn't. Okay. So number 1 is self-reflection. And this is what my therapist, told me. She was like, take the time to journal or just sit with your thoughts. I know that's scary to like really sit there and like be in your head, because everybody is always in their head. But I think for women, because we are so emotional, I think that even if you don't want to sit with your thoughts because you're an emotional person and it may add fuel to the fire, sit there and write it out. Like I used to, and I actually still do, I'll write out the entire situation in third person. I never read it back, but that's how I process it. And in that moment, I'm asking myself, what role did I play in this situation? Fuck what the other person did. They did what they did. You can't change what they did. You can't, go back in time and all of that. They did it. It's done. You can't, there is no changing it. There is no erasing it. There is no erasing it from your memory. What role did I play in this situation? And then number 2 is you can seek feedback. You can ask people that you trust for their perspective. Sometimes we are blind to our own behaviors. I know for myself, I'm not even going to sit here and lie. I wasn't really blind to my behaviors. I was very self-aware of my behaviors. And I just, honestly, because I felt like I was entitled to behave the way I was behaving because of my feelings, I didn't give a fuck. And that's just the honest to goodness truth. Number 3 is apologize when necessary. A sincere apology definitely goes a long way. Not just for others, but for yourself. And you forgive yourself for the mistakes that you made and you commit to doing better. Now, with saying that, don't apologize just because, oh, I owe you an apology. You need to mean it. It needs to be sincere. If you don't feel bad, don't apologize. Because that means maybe you need you have growing to do. You have growth that needs to be accomplished. But as us as women, I've always heard the saying, happy wife, happy life. Or, whatever my wife wants, or whatever the case may be, or whatever she wants. It shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't. Because it's not fair. So, and then number 4 is create an action plan. If you recognize a pattern that you do, figure out what steps you can do to change it. I recognized that I bottle things up instead of saying something that bothers me. So when I bottle them up, my emotions go high, and then it's that one thing that sends me over the edge where I explode like a shook up pop in a store. I will just spew out everything that I was feeling, or I hold on to it. And I hold on to it. I'm mad at whoever I'm mad at. And then something that happened that like, I'm just like, all right, I can't take no more. and I'm out this jam, and I just start spewing. I start verbally assassinating people because now I'm pissed off to the point where I can no longer hold this in. I can no longer mask my disdain for whatever you did to me. Now you feel my wrath. And I don't want to be that way. I just feel like if I get that way, for me, I learn to communicate. Like even if you don't want to be confrontational, like in that person's face, once you go home and you sit down and you settle down and you like relax, send a text message like, hey, this is what bothered me this day, blase blase, this is what went down, la da da da. I could be reading too much into this, or maybe I'm not, but this is how I felt. And whether that person chooses to acknowledge how you felt or whatever the case may be, you have grown as a person because you didn't react how most people thought you would react if you were to address something. And yeah. And then number 5, you have to give yourself grace because you're still learning. I had to give myself grace so many times. I thought that Grace had left the building. Grace didn't want to see me coming. Okay? Because accountability isn't about you beating yourself up. Accountability is about learning and evolving and being kind to yourself in the process. So just baby steps. Take it one day at a time. Don't rush it. You're going to get there. This is all about growth, right? And I want to leave everybody with this thought. We are at the now end of the episode. And I want to make sure that even though I was speaking in general, I did want to mostly direct this for women because I see a lot of the times that because we are such emotional creatures that I've said in the beginning of this episode, we create the excuse, well, I acted this way because you made me feel like. I reacted this way because you did blah, blah, blah. And nobody is saying that you are not entitled to feel how you feel. Nobody is saying that you are not entitled to, have a reaction. But when it comes to handling things, you can't use that excuse of, well, I did this because I felt like. That's not okay. That's not taking accountability. That's an excuse. That's a scapegoat. And if we're going to be honest, and if we're going to be transparent, and if we want the growth, you have to do the work. You have to recognize you're not always right. You have to recognize that your emotional outbursts are not called for. Your feelings are valid. How you react afterwards is not. Because although you may be acting off of emotion or responding off of emotion, you still low-key are using your brain to figure out what your next move is, regardless of whether it's impulsive emotion or calm down emotion. You're using your brain. So in that term, it becomes intentional, regardless of what you say. So you have to take the accountability for, if I do this, this may be the consequence. If I do that, this is what I may get back in return. So you have to be mentally prepared. You have to always keep thinking. Even as an emotional creature. And it's hard. Believe me, it's hard because I promise the things that I be wanting to say, I bite my tongue and I just look. And people know when I'm biting my tongue because I do this little thing with my face. And I put my hands on my hips and I was like, but if I move out of that position or you ask me anything in that moment, I am liable to hurt your feelings. So, to end the episode and to leave you with a thought, accountability is not a weakness. It's a strength. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about owning your power to change, to grow, and to move forward. So my challenge for you over the next week is when something doesn't go as planned or when you feel frustrated, take a pause. Reflect. Ask yourself, what can I take responsibility for here? Is it a breakdown in communication? Is it not holding up your end of the bargain? Is it your emotions, or not even your emotions, your responses, your attitude? What is it in that moment that you can take responsibility for that you have done? Not the other person, not pointing the finger, but what have you done? And then you might be surprised about how free you feel when you own your part and you let go of all the unnecessary when you let go. Good God Almighty, I can't read my own typing. Jesus, as you might be surprised at how freeing it feels to own your part and then let the rest of it go. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today to the Sis Hold Me to a podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I would actually love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And I want to set up an email, and I don't know if I'm going to, but I want to set up an email where people can like just email me stories of where they had to take accountability, their stories of growth, just anything, or like DM me on Instagram. So the Instagram page will be down at the bottom. I have to change my TikTok name. So I'll link that probably in the next episode because I have to change it. And then obviously if you're watching this on YouTube, but I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. So remember, growth starts with accountability, and you are capable of amazing things. Take care and be kind to yourself. And don't forget, it is Sunday, so do your Sunday reset. Clean them sheets, clean that room, do that laundry, get them children ready for the week, get yourself ready for the week. It is freezing cold in Chicago. Freezing, -degree weather. Over it. Wind chill, -15. Stay warm. And yeah, I will see you all next week. Peace.